This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam. And I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people's heads that had so much to gain and had such a material motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader?
Don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
now these people are in very high positions, yeah.
Okay, so we're back, and there's a second part to the a second question.
The second question from the same person, Councilman Les Winan. I guess I'll just read it because it's the same thing. Just remember to read 6. All right. Do you think that the bipartisan neoliberal governing regime will end in our lifetime? It's been around for roughly 48 years and can't last forever, but it's also hard to predict when it will erode. Just curious about your thoughts on neoliberalism's longevity and longevity, given how difficult it is for even tepidly left candidates to gain power. Thanks. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty pessimistic about the future of actual left in America. Now, I don't know. I think that's a separate question from the longevity of neoliberalism, or whether I think that if neoliberalism is replaced by something, it will be I don't want to say fascism. I guess I both do and don't want to say fascism, because I feel if you say that, people think that you're being really alarmist. And I also, I think that because the connotations of fascism maybe are more extreme than what I mean. But if neoliberalism is replaced by anything, I don't think that will be something that has good things in place of, the things that we dislike about neoliberalism. Probably retain most of the bad things about neoliberalism, but be, more the strong, more openly and proudly dominating the weak, I guess. Probably the most likely development, I would say.
Yeah, I'm a little bit pessimistic as well. But at the same time, I do think that, every era has its day and, gives birth to something else, basically. I feel I don't know. Has neoliberalism, I guess you could say 48 years. What is that? Basically, that's...
I don't know what they're...
Since we went off the gold standard, the early 70...
I don't know what they're basing that on necessarily.
Or 74. I'd say maybe 74. Yeah. It was a I don't think they flipped a switch one day and
exactly.
neoliberalism turned on it. And also, the more we've gone through all of the Gustavus Myers stuff, you realize that there are certain features of American capitalism that maybe today we would call neoliberal, oh, that's neoliberalism, but it's always kind of been there to some degree, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it also brings in the trickiness of what to call it.
Yeah, there's in the 19th and early 20th century context, I think. There's also the Keynesian dimension, I guess, or the post-Keynesian dimension of neoliberalism, maybe, because it's certainly not Keynesian, but kind of a post-Keynesian pose, I guess. But
it's weird, neoliberalism.
Yeah. But I think there's a global posture that is different from the 19th, early 20th century context. I feel the global, the aspect of globalization and the attention to a global market regime is a pretty definitive aspect of neoliberalism.
It's
which is
that's
not really
from...
super present in pre-World War II context.
That's true. Yeah.
And also the whole idea, the New Deal, basically the New Deal ethos that Gustavus Myers was celebrating, that's basically been no longer within the sort of Overton window, I guess, the neoliberal Overton window. Like that's just beyond the pall, which is, pretty pathetic, but is true.
Well, also, as
like
we brought up before,
NAFTA is like the iconic neoliberal policy or like program, I would say.
So is I would say the EU bloc is also very emblematic of like neoliberal everything, basically.
Yeah.
All the way down to the sus pan ritual, but the idea of kind of like the flattening of like the erasure of like national boundaries and distinction, the utter domination of like markets and corporate power, a kind of further hollowing out of like the state. The state still exists, but almost really nakedly as like an instrument of like private capital and private corporate power. And we've backslid. Also, as we brought up like many times, the antagonism that was there in the early 20th century, the Soviet Union, is no longer around. So I think the behavior of capitalism really kind of it kind of went, neoliberalism kind of went into overdrive post 1991 and hasn't really slowed down since. Now, I do think that we're in an interesting time, though.
I feel like, I guess Reagan is, maybe more of a neocon. I feel like neocons and neoliberals, like, you would think that they are like opposed because we think of liberals and conservatives as being like, a binary opposite. But I feel like there's, in terms of like the actual like way that neoliberals like self-define or that like people talk about neoliberalism, obviously like a famously kind of amorphous term that sometimes is used like, in an imprecise way. Although the same could be said of like neocons, but I feel like neocons and liberals aren't necessarily opposed. I feel like there are aspects of Reagan that are neoliberal.
Well, that's the thing that gets confusing about terminology, especially because if you go back and look at it, there really isn't much of an antagonism between neoliberalism and neoconservatism.
Exactly.
The way there is between, say, liberalism and conservatism.
Although, yeah, I mean,
they kind of go hand in hand. They really speak to maybe more, like neoliberalism is usually applied strictly to more economic matters, and neoconservatism is usually applied more to like an approach to foreign policy and like the use of the military and things like that.
Yeah,
but they really go hand in hand.
Whereas neoliberalism is like foreign, economic policy, but also to an extent domestic policy insofar as like everything has to be, it's like the integration of our market with a global marketplace that has to be conceived according to like some laissez-faire principle or whatever, like some free market idea.
And of course, also let's not forget that one of the first people to be sort of called a neoliberal was not like some Justin Trudeau lib, but I believe it was Pinochet that was first called a neoliberal, because at that time it meant you're adopting these kind of neoliberal economic policies that are formulated by like Milton Friedman or people like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the same time, like you look at political neocons,
themselves neoliberals, like proudly.
Like
it
and liberal
like
in the economic like laissez-faire sense, right? Yeah. But Pinochet, if you look, like Pinochet, it seems kind of like follows more on, in terms of a foreign policy relationship thing, you would expect, it's like the neocons in Washington that like love Pinochet the much. They love right-wing, dictators that were put into power with the help of the CIA and stuff like that. But so I think they're really just like not even two sides of the same coin.
They're like his sort of receptiveness to like the integration of their economy with that of the United States was like fundamentally neoliberal.
Exactly.
Because
he wasn't a protectionist, basically.
Exactly. He was welcoming. He was friendly. He's a good man.
Anaconda copper. Exactly.
Yeah. So, right. I mean, what I really see is almost, it's hard to like keep all those balls in the air in terms of like trying to predict the future. Sometimes I feel like I have like a better ability to intuit the future than some, but even that being the case, like I would not say that I have a good ability to intuit the future. I don't necessarily see like if there's a resistance to sort of like maybe a laissez-faire aspect of neoliberal ideology, it would be, or like a sort of isolationist streak that develops. I mean, we kind of see that happening. Like that is really like, I don't think that like, you're right that like these movements or these sort of dominant ideas do shade into each other. but I think you can kind of tell like what direction it would go into. And I don't think that it would go into. First of all, I think that like the American left is so like thoroughly psyoped and like just like broken and stupid. Not excluding our listeners, and like no, that's not like true of like all like it's not true of like every. But I just think that there's a lot of. And, I'm saying this because, like, of where my personal sympathies are, like, and I feel like, right-wingers would probably be saying the same thing, like, about the right wing. But I do feel that the momentum is, if anywhere, I think that neoliberalism may prove more durable than perhaps it might appear to some. But I think that if it were to go in any direction, it would be, like, the sort of Trumpist politics of, like, being anti-NAFTA, but also
NatCon,
like
NatConism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think that NatConism is making gains against neoconservatism on the right.
For sure. I mean, neoconservatism. Yeah, it really is. In terms of neoconservatism as being like an aggressive foreign policy and like an idea of like American hegemony through like military, through like the projection of military power in certain spheres. I think that, that's definitely, the right is definitely soured on that. I mean, I think that people realized, post-Iraq, people realized, like, the deep unpopularity of that with people. Like, the Iraq War was incredibly unpopular. The idea that America is going to... the sort of justifications for these wars, like, were not successful, and people are deeply disillusioned with them. And also the idea of the necessity of maintaining our empire. Like, the American people don't believe in it anymore. So,
that seems about right.
Changes their rhetoric. But does it change the actual calculus behind the scenes? That's a different question, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre today that kind of the neoliberal, and I guess when they say neoliberal, I think today generally means like the centrist kind of democratic party kind of like consensus, basically,
yes.
which has picked up some of the old like Bush era neocons, the like never Trumpers, who have kind of like come back home to like the party of Brzezinski. And then you have these kind of more isolationist NatCons who, with one exception, or maybe one or two exceptions, they probably would be interested maybe in going to war against like China or Iran. But other than that, like they're not as interested because China is a throwback to the glory days of like the Cold War, and they kind of appreciate the importance of having this like Leviathan communist like external enemy like in the Far East. Also, even with like Carl Oglesby talking about how like the cowboy class, has always been way more obsessed with like land wars in Asia as a sort of thing, whereas the Yankee neoliberals are much more obsessed with like keeping up appearances in Europe, and more recently being really obsessed, like almost as obsessed with Russia as like the John Birchers were like in the 50s, but for kind of different reasons.
It's interesting that like, I guess like it's hard to parse in a way because what we have to interpret a lot of the time is, there's two dimensions like to American politics on one hand, which is like one is the participatory side, where there is like rhetorical contestation around these issues. And a lot of that is deeply inflected by like cultural bullshit and like sort of political signaling. So it was interesting that, I was going to say like, it's weird that there was like such a disillusionment with the like, I feel like in terms of like what the rhetoric was from like conservatives, it was like very anti like the whole project of the ongoing occupation of Afghanistan. But after Biden pulled out, then I feel like they kind of changed their tune, and then they were like, "Oh, we should have stayed, or like done it differently, or something like that." So it's like weird where they had to counter signal each other. But I was gonna say it's weird to me that they would be opposed to that, but they would be in favor. We're talking about like a hypothetical person, and maybe these two ideas wouldn't actually exist in the same person, but it's weird to think that like someone would oppose one of those things, but like be in favor of war with Iran, where,
it's strange.
In terms of like actual like real politique, I feel like one almost serves the other. It would be pretty convenient to have like a sympathetic government in Afghanistan if you wanted to go to war with Iran. Same with Iraq.
You think so? Well, I think, there are those kinds of calculations. Same with like how some people on the right in the kind of Flynn, like proto-NatCon sphere, were kind of interested in making inroads towards Russia, not because they were like Putin agents or something like that necessarily, but because they view the number one enemy as China, and they're playing that old like grand chessboard game of play the bear against the dragon kind of shit.
Yes.
And you know, like they're making a kind of tactical alliance, kind of the opposite of what Kissinger wanted to do in the 70s, which he laid out, like basically we're going to team up with China to undermine the Soviet Union. And then later one day, if China gets more powerful, we'll have to turn on China and become their enemy. But like for now, this kind of works for us, you know?
Yes.
And
I mean, really, like any of these frameworks that like could exist, like is going to need like some kind of like existential struggle or enemy to justify itself, I feel like, you know? So in terms of like neoliberalism, really like the forces of like quote unquote like reaction or like protectionism itself, it really does have an internal enemy. Like the biggest internal enemy of neoliberalism is in a way like the MAGA guy who like isn't on board with like the vision and like he's, you know, resisting. He's a white supremacist.
And then abroad, there's just repetitions of that guy in Putin and Orban and like all these other people. Like, even if they are sus sometimes, it's like you see them as kind of just one kind of reactionary, like bad guy, bigot, you know, person that doesn't want to open all the borders. It's like
Ukraine is unique because you do actually see a bit of a consensus there for the most part. Like,
though, I mean, if you turn on Fox News, there are people complaining, or they like to say, you know, we just sent $40 billion to Ukraine and we can't do fill in the blank.
No, absolutely. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. Like Tucker, I feel like is like not all about Ukraine. And like people like JD Vance, you know, the vanguard of like that sort of like NatCon impulse, like for sure. But the sort of trappings of that are more widely popular than like the opposition to Ukraine is. I don't know if you saw, like, I think I texted some of, you know, our mutual friends and you like that ad about George P. Bush. That's like the liberal George P. Bush, you know, he's a liberal. Yeah. It was like,
I hate that shit so much that now like the Bushes are getting lib washed.
Yeah, basically. It's weird on two levels. Yes, it's very strange. Like it's one of those things. Yeah, like just imagine showing it to somebody like in, you know, like 5 years ago or something. Like you'd be like, what the fuck? I guess probably not 5. It's been a while, but
I mean, it is
bizarre. If you went to like pre-Trump America and showed it to somebody, they'd be like, what the fuck?
Oh, it's weird. But I mean, I do think there were a lot of conservatives after 2008. It's one reason why Barack Obama won as much as he did. And that's why there are, maybe not a ton, but there were like Obama Trump voters. You know what I mean? Like people that voted for Obama in 2008. And really, I think
were
the commonality
Trump Biden
there.
voters. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the commonality there is like they wanted to vote for a kind of something new. Like something that was perceived as not being from like the swamp. And in 2008, that was Obama.
Memories, and they tend to like switch parties and like get pissed off at whatever party's in power. And then, I think that's just a general phenomenon.
Yeah, but the Bushes, I mean, a lot of people were disappointed in the Bushes. And I think what you see now on the right is like a confused, you see a kind of a confused opposition to like the Bushes in the sense of they feel like they got sold a bill of goods, and whether it's because like the Bushes are globalists or because they're actually liberals or, you know, something like that, they sense that like the Bushes fucked them over. But of course, you know, we talk about the Bushes so much. I don't think most of those people understand just how deep the rabbit hole goes. And they'd also don't understand that like, it's not, the problem wasn't that like Bush is like secretly a liberal. The problem might have been that he comes from a very rarefied like Anglo-American elite class and was like inducted into Skull and Bones and spent his whole life like serving the shadow government and probably killed JFK, you know, but like a lot of people don't know that. So they just think that like maybe, or like Jeb Bush is a cuck or something like that, you know? They don't have the most fleshed out, like
and
you really
also,
could go all
like,
day.
It's a convenient like political attack to make that like is true and will like garner sympathy, but like it can be easily made by like disingenuous people who don't like differ politically in a meaningful way, which I think is by and large like the conservative critique of the Bushes like has that character, like in terms of like the actual like practicalities of it, like their actual like beliefs are not, or maybe superficially different. That's like kind of, that's the point that I was making like before. Like if there is like a turn kind of in American politics, I think that it would kind of, I mean, the most likely form that it would take would be, you know, very directed inward towards perceived enemies among like Americans, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like
that
and
we
I
seem to
guess,
be
you know,
trending
that
towards
could
that.
take a liberal form as well, you know, like
Yeah,
which
I guess
you know is a
so.
great American tradition. So if there is a turn in American politics, I think that will be like an intensification of that. I mean, you theoretically could take a leftist form because, like, you know, if there were any kind of like increased, like if there was like a renaissance of like a true left in America, really like what it would have to do would be to like take serious like steps to like cut off, and this is what every other side says about what they want to do to their enemies, the people who they don't like, but you would have to take actual like steps to like uproot the power of the reactionary and like shitty. I mean, I guess they're both kind of
Well,
yeah.
but like if you do that and you don't go after everybody, you don't go after like the 0.0001%, regardless of whether or not they preach reactionary values or enlightened liberal values. I think
Well,
you're not
yeah,
gonna
I
get
mean,
very
enlightened
far.
liberal values, like, I guess I would include that, like, in reaction, like, by that definition. But, yeah, I know, I understand what you mean in terms of, like usually when you think of reactionary, you think of, like, you know, a stereotypical, like, MAGA person. But, I mean,
Yeah, I'm not
I guess,
thinking of
yeah.
like a natural gas like tycoon in like a region that has like $2 billion necessarily, though that
No.
we'll get to them. But not to say they're
No,
not
but
a
in
problem, or
fact-
even
and
the
in fact,
Koch
like,
brothers
those,
who get all the
like,
attention.
That type of reactionary isn't, like, very deeply embedded, like, in the government. Like, they're not, like, part of the quote-unquote, like, deep state, really. You
It
know,
doesn't
like,
seem
you
to
would
be the
There would have to be, like,
case,
a
like-
real, like... There had to be a fundamental transformation, honestly, because, yeah, I mean, I think that they, like... They have, like, a theory of, like, how stuff works, and I think that they, like, would like to change that, people who truly are ideologically sympathetic to that. Although I think that it is hard to parse like what is true ideological sympathy and what is opportunism. You know, I
Absolutely.
think JD Vance like talks like a pretty convincing game, and like if you didn't really know better, then you might think that he was sincere. And I think that maybe he thinks. I think that it maybe for even him it is a bit ambiguous. You know, like whether how sincere he even is.
Absolutely, we can never rule
himself,
that
you know?
out. Exactly.
Yeah, like
exactly.
but.
I mean, as
But
far
yeah,
as
I
like
think, you know, you would have to basically like uproot like elements of the deep state, like is what I mean, like, you know, both, yeah, like whatever like the superficial element of it is, because I think that really like another political trend that I see, and again, like as I said, I'm not like a super great at intuiting the future, and I don't like to put myself in the position of like diagnosing political problems and certainly not prescribing solutions, but another trend that I do see is kind of like the consolidation of policies in terms of like everything practical, in terms of like economic ideas, in terms of you know, the orientation towards like the world outside the United States, and like a very sharp difference developing around cultural bullshit.
you mean
you know,
within the United States?
Yeah, within the United States. Like I
Yeah.
see that like the two sort of sides, the two political sides of the United States, the, you know, there are Democrats, there are Republicans, et cetera, liberals and conservatives. Like
Yeah.
in terms of like, for most people, like what they care about most deeply, unless there's something that's like a real imminent thing in their lives, like a real, like, you know, something like their health is in trouble, or like something to do with their job.
There's no baby formula.
Yeah, something like that, unless there's, but I mean, some of that stuff is like, you know, perceived, and like, you know, some people get upset about those type of things, or things adjacent to that are less real, that like are, you know, just sort of phantom, or like the result of like overexposure to like social media or to traditional media. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people, what like really fires them up a lot, regardless of even regardless of like the material circumstances, like they could be like just getting fucking wrecked and like mistreated by, you know, the institutions that they interact with in their lives. But, you know, the PSYOP infrastructure is very powerful, and I do think that what mobilizes people and what people get fired up about the most across the board, like across the political discourse of America, is like TV shit and like critical race theory and like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
Disney
it's undeniable.
groomers,
It's undeniable. Like you see that that's their main election strategy. Like that's what is, you know, their salient, if not their salient issue. It's stuff around that. like, you know, Disney groomer, et cetera, or like I will defend Disney from like the false accusation of being gruesome, like shit like that. You know, like that is
never forget January 6th.
Against like all reason. That is what seems to like mobilize people the most. But the other side of that, I feel like, is that outside of the increasingly shrill opposition on issues like that, like this sort of irreconcilable like gulf that's just widening and widening over like in the like epistemological breach that people cannot pass on that type of stuff, like the actual politics, like the actual like practical policies, I feel like are converging like towards like Peter Thiel bullshit.
Center.
The serious center of like
that, which is kind of the deep state's MO, because it has like it has very kind of grotesque features of both like right wing and liberal tendencies in America, but it's all in the service of imperialism,
Slava Ukraini,
well, exactly, and it's like one side might kind of not go along with it in a particular instance, but then there's like another issue where they will go along with the bullshit. So like the end result is that there's a constituency blindly advocating for some imperialist bullshit on like every issue. Like if the liberals don't want to attack Iran, well, don't worry, the Trump people do.
Exactly, you know, or you know, we actually have a question coming about the Squad. That's a perfect segue.
I moved it up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think actually it feeds well into this in a way because...
let's just go,
Okay, yeah, fine. We can go into that one.
Because we talked about the right, but I think they really want to know about the tepidly left candidates.
Well, I think this is a good example. Well, why don't you... Yeah, read the question. And then,
the next question, which I'm bumping up, again, the synchronicities. Wow. Jeffrey Epstein is alive in Tel Aviv, asked on September 9th. Are AOC and the Squad/Justice Dems a PSYOP? I get bad vibes from the role that Saikat Chakrabarti, the former AOC communications guy and Justice Dems, chief, I think it was a campaign manager, former AOC campaign manager and Justice Dems founder, has played in the movement. The guy is a founder of the payment processor Stripe and also got caught wearing a T-shirt with Subhash Chandra Bose, an Indian fascist, on it. AOC's lack of criticism of the CIA, as well as her 2010 study abroad to Niger, are also very sus. Yeah, well,
that's a very interesting factor that I had not heard about wearing the Indian fascist shirt.
Oh yes. Well, if there are any Dave Emery listeners, you would have heard about that many times, because he brings it up a lot, and he goes all the way. Yeah, I think he did like a 10-part series on like Subhash Chandra Bose and how like he loved Hitler, and I forget if he met Hitler or not, but he was like, when you talk about those Indians that during World War II really loved the Nazis, Subhash Chandra Bose is pretty much that guy to a T. And I've seen the picture that AOC's campaign manager Saikat Chakrabarti is wearing a shirt with his face on it. Yeah, I mean, this guy, honestly, the Justice Dems, they're sus as fuck. I'm calling it out. Like,
oh yeah, they're definitely a PSYOP. And one of the main ways in which they are a PSYOP, which is directly relevant to what I was just saying, is that, and I think that I could see, I know you want to get away from the topic of like JD Vance stuff, but I could see JD Vance playing a similar role where he's like, oh, I'm not going to vote for this. Like, see, we still have integrity. That's exactly what AOC did. They almost don't even bother doing it anymore. But it was like, AOC being like, no, I abstain from giving Israel a zillion dollars or whatever. But of course it ultimately is meaningless and doesn't matter because everyone else voted for it. But it's just, it's a PSYOP, literally. Like, it's just like a PR stunt for the Democratic Party.
And I do wonder, because you could go down a rabbit hole with the Justice Dems beyond just that they're kind of like a fake left PSYOP, maybe in kind of a Bernie way, just to give people the illusion that there is a left wing to the Democratic Party and make people feel like, especially with these very... And let's be real, like a lot of these Squad members are very like telegenic and charismatic and stuff, and sometimes they pop off and say some good things that get a lot of play, and simultaneously have become like right wing boogie women.
I don't really think Ilhan is good for the most part, but I still think she probably has the best foreign policy of any American politician.
She talks a much better game on foreign policy, whereas AOC is like shockingly. I mean, Bernie's pretty bad too these days, if we're being honest, and even like in the 90s with Yugoslavia. But AOC has like nothing to say about fucking foreign policy. She just stays the fuck away from it, except if it's like Slava Ukraini or something like that. Like, I get very sus vibes from her. Also, you know, I think if we want to talk about it, like her whole rise to being kind of roped into like running for Congress and the whole story of how that happened. I think there are like more little stories that have come out in the last few years. And it just kind of smells a little more like I think even back then it did, but especially now, it's like, I'm not buying this fucking story about you were just a bartender and then you just decided to run for Congress and blah, blah, blah.
I mean,
I think there was more to, I mean, first of all, she worked in Ted Kennedy's office.
Yeah. To be fair, most
which like she didn't talk
like
about.
that.
No, I know. But like for one, she did that fucking trip to Niger. I think it was Niger in 2010, which, you know, could just about, I don't know if it was like Peace Corps. It was something similar to that. And then she worked in Ted Kennedy's office, I think either a little bit before or after that, went to BU. And I forget also, I'd have to go look it up, but there was something about how she got profiled as like, you know, a young leader kind of thing by some like sus, like Soros-y, like think tank sort of thing, like before she ran and was like basically a nobody. So it almost seems like she was like cast for the role. Like she was picked to be like, you have the perfect kind of image and personality and like thing that we're like going for. And then she gets this guy who's like, this tech weirdo who wears shirts of like Indian fascists, you know, Saikat Chakrabarti, who just pops up suddenly and is like, oh, I'm a socialist actually, after like making a bunch of money in Silicon Valley and Wall Street. And then just decides, I'm like a Bernie supporter. So he joined the Bernie campaign in 2015, like very early on. I guess he told Rolling Stone, I wasn't entirely sure he had all the right solutions, but I knew he was talking about the right problems. Right there, it sounds like, oh, don't worry, I'm not a fucking socialist. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, that almost sounds like something J.D. Vance would say about Bernie. I don't think he has the right solutions, but he is talking about the right problem. Even Trump would say shit like that. So it's like, already, I'm just like, I don't know. And he was like, I guess he was the director of organizing technology for the Sanders campaign. And I don't know, he developed a messaging tool called Spoke, which is released under the MIT license to help volunteers find other volunteers and blah, blah, blah. So I guess, you know, his technological edge is credited with being a major component in the success of Bernie's 2016 run. And then after the 2016 election, this is actually funny. Yeah, him, Zach Exley, who's a former fellow Bernie campaign executive, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, and Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk became co-founders of the Justice Democrats.
Well.
And so, I always thought that name was just like weird for like for sort of like the political action committee that's supposed to be like the left wing of the Democratic Party, calling them like Justice Democrats. It just seems like, why justice? That's like a weird, it's a random fucking word to kind of pull out. So that's the group that basically got a lot of people like elected, like Cory Bush and the whole squad. I don't know what's up with this Zach Exley guy. He went to the JFK School of Government at Harvard. He was the organizing director at MoveOn.org. Got involved with the Howard Dean 2004 primary. He created the political parody website gwbush.com. Oh my God, it was probably like some jib jab thing.
Wow. Subhash Chandra Bose invented the term Jai Hind, or he sort of popularized it.
Oh, interesting.
It was the Slavic Ukraini of its time.
It is. It really is. Yeah, no, if you look up Subhash Chandra, I mean, I wonder if he's ever... That's just so annoying that you could wear a shirt like that and like nobody ever questions you about it.
Yeah, people in America generally turn a blind eye to like... I mean, if people think that like there's a problem with fascism in America, like... Alarming.
Okay, yeah.
But it
Here,
doesn't
actually,
matter 'cause it's
Newsweek.
filthy Muslim scum who suffer the most, and howdy modi.
Actually, check this out. So Newsweek actually wrote about this, and this was crazy. This is in 2019, so it's not like it was a picture of him like many years ago wearing the shirt. It was in 2019 he wore it. So it says that AOC's chief of staff has come under fire after being spotted wearing a T-shirt bearing the image of a controversial Indian independence figure who collaborated with Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime during World War II. Saikat Chakrabarti wore the green shirt in a video aired by Now This News PSYOP in December, detailing Ocasio-Cortez's unexpected rise and eventual congressional victory in last year's midterm elections, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency reported. Bose was an Indian nationalist leader who worked with the Nazis and the Japanese Empire to rid the subcontinent of the British during World War II. Hitler recognized Bose as the leader of Azad Hind, quote, Free India, and his Indian National Army fought alongside the Imperial Japanese Army against British troops as battle raged across what is now Myanmar and into the eastern fringes of Indian territory. Bose died just weeks after the war ended. In August 1945, the Japanese plane on which he was traveling crashed in Taiwan, having been overloaded with cargo. Though many popular conspiracy theories claim otherwise, Bose later died in hospital from severe burns, and his ashes were buried in Tokyo. Wow. So, yeah. Okay, so he got interviewed.
But I mean, I understand how, like, it's complicated, when you're, like, resisting a colonial power, struggling for independence and everything. But at the same time, you don't need to wear a shirt with that person on it. Like, I understand how, like, it's a complex situation or something. But, like, if they're a fucking Nazi who like believes in National Socialism and it's like a known fact, which I assume you know as well. Like, what are you getting at?
I'm sure he does. Yeah.
Like,
well, they interviewed
I'm sure that
Shruti Kapila.
It's a problem.
Shruti Kapila was a lecturer in Indian history at Cambridge, and she was interviewed, and she said, Bose was certainly an anti-colonialist, and he definitely deserves some of the controversy. You can't whitewash the fact that Bose does take help from the Nazis. On this basis, she suggested that Chakrabarti's decision to wear the T-shirt outside of India is highly controversial. She says his ideology was complex. It was described as socialist and statist, and stressed that he cannot be considered a right-wing figure in the vein of the... So it's basically a Strasserite. He's like an Indian Strasserite, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, he called for a middle way between socialism and fascism, fusing elements of both to create a uniquely Indian ideology. I guess Chakrabarti refused to comment on the record to Newsweek about wearing the T-shirt. So he's just like, no comment.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I
cool.
also think passing it off as if it were just inside India, people would understand. I mean, I'm sure they would, but
it's still,
if you
not
wear a
free
Confederate flag, people in the United States will understand.
Well, I don't know. Like, especially in the era of Modi, it's a little bit sus to be running around the world.
Definitely sus.
Wearing a fucking Subhash Chandra Bose shirt, and what was she doing in Niger? Let me find out real quick. I mean, I remember seeing old pictures of her kind of going there. Let's see. She worked for, I want to see when. Yeah, she did a study abroad there at junior year. She had an unusual reaction to poverty, according to The Guardian. But let me see what they're saying. Is this are they attacking her? Oh, okay, interesting. She spent her junior year in the African nation of Niger, where she had an unusual reaction to poverty. She decided Niger's struggling citizens had, quote, a level of enjoyment that just does not exist in American life. And, that's where she met her boo, Riley Roberts, the redheaded guy who's been her boyfriend all these years. He's a tech person.
Oh yeah, they're getting married soon, right? I saw that they were engaged.
I think so. They went to the Met Gala with the Bronfman. Yeah, so she came out of nowhere, a bartender who came out of nowhere to be elected right after her 29th birthday. She was launched into politics by her brother Gabriel, who heard a group called Brand New Congress, formed by Bernie Sanders supporters, was looking for people to nominate anyone they thought should run in 2018. Pulled over to the side of the road in a rainstorm, Gabriel phoned his sister and asked if she wanted to run. Her reaction, F it, sure, whatever. So her brother, still sitting in his car, filled out the web form and hit send. Wow. Brand new Congress morphed into Justice Democrats who had 10,000 nominations for candidates. Gradually, AOC became their favorite, not only because she was extremely smart, but also because she was, quote, really pretty. Okay. That, Corbin Trent explained, is like, this is a quote, like 20%, 50% of being on TV. Trent became her communications director. That is interesting. So she literally did kind of submit like an open casting call for like a Bernie Crat candidate, which, you know, you could say is not sus, but I could also say otherwise. And then they went after this kind of old school Democrat, Joe Crowley, who had been, you know, in that seat for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that he was definitely cast by people as being this like, well, Pelosi pawn, like dumb centrist, like lib cuck, like whatever. Yeah. That all like the, you know, all the cool Bernie gentrifiers in Queens were going to vote out and stuff. But then, okay. And not saying that, you know, Joe Crowley would be better. But like, is this like really, and you know, maybe she represents the vibe of some of her constituents better than Joe Crowley did. But I don't know. I mean, you know, she just got plucked. The other the weird thing I think I heard recently, I think I saw, we try to never mention like bread to people on Subliminal Jihad, but I think Hassan had the Pussy Riot girl on like a month or two ago.
Hassan Piker, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. I think it was Hassan Piker. And he had like Grimes and Nadia from Pussy Riot on. It was like weird.
Well,
and
yeah, I don't even
know, but
like,
the clip was
sometimes like gain awareness. Okay, sorry. What is it? All right.
Sorry, no, but let's not get on a thing about BreadTube. No, just the thing was like shit. Like Nadia from Pussy Riot was telling a story about like, oh, I met AOC at like the bar that she worked at Union Square in like 2016 or something like that, and blah blah blah. And it was just like, like sus, like because you know Pussy Riot is like CIA as fuck. You know, there's all about like bleh, I'm gonna like pee on this altar and like have sex in a museum and then get mad when they arrest me and say Putler's evil, blah blah blah. Like they're just so cringe. And so that was interesting that like, oh, she was running into Pussy Riot like randomly. Interesting. And I guess they had a mutual friend. Also interesting. So I don't know. I mean, we could poke all day at like little sus factoids, but I think just, you know, judge the radical by their fruits. I don't think that the squad has. I do not have very high hopes for them in terms of like being the future of the Democratic Party.
It's gonna. I mean, I guess they are the future of the Democratic Party. I mean, AOC will likely be president one day.
That's the
I
new
don't know about
the
likely,
new binary.
but it's a distinct possibility, which I think will be terrible.
I get CIA vibes from the whole crowd, basically. And Cenk Uyghur, I mean, wait, once again, Cenk Uyghur, who's his nephew? Hassan Piker.
Right, yes.
See, it's a big club and we ain't in it, you know?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Like these like fake progressive motherfuckers. And
Hassan Piker is like, I don't even pay attention to that, so I had no idea that like what he does or like, it's bizarre to me. But
occasionally I see something, but so yeah, I don't know.
It's weird that he like it was weird to me that he would even have like, I guess why not? He's a big celebrity.
Well, I like that he's hanging out with Pussy Riot, who are like really, they're almost like right-wing anarchists. The other Pussy Riot girl was like, her boyfriend is like basically a Russian neo-Nazi, and she's like, oh wow, didn't realize that he was like a Nazi. We're actually like, he's really cool though. Like politics aside,
I didn't realize he was a Nazi.
They're so sus and fucking fash and like stupid, and like I hate it. And so I think something similar is going on here with the American left, where like we're not given anybody that is truly radical. Nobody that gets as, I don't want to say never ever, but like I think when somebody gets a really big springboard to become like an overnight national celebrity and like a leftist thought leader and develops like really powerful, massive parasocial relationships, like they're following, because that's really AOC's like superpower is like her Instagram following more so than her relationship with her like actual constituents.
Yes.
Then you have to ask yourself, you have to be like a little bit skeptical of like the radical potential of this person that just seemed to like, I mean, there's even more sus people.
What has she done?
Well, yeah.
Has she like mobilized anyone? Has she, I mean, I know she's just like one congressperson, but like, I mean,
and doesn't have
whatever.
seniority
Like,
and stuff.
wait, what did she do?
But I
did she
mean,
do something?
Well, no, that she doesn't have seniority, so like you could argue that like what could she do? The system's set up this way.
Well, then,
like,
why do we celebrate her? Why do we care about her? Like, why do we consider her to be significant? Like, if she can't accomplish anything.
Actually, I have to
raise
this up.
awareness, and then everyone's just like, okay, well, I don't care.
Yes. The one other person though that's like a really good case for like the whole Justice Dems thing being super sus is Julia Salazar. Remember
Yes,
her?
I do vaguely
Is she
remember
still
her.
in office?
Was she ever in office? I thought she lost. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yes, she is. She's a New York State senator.
What? Wow, I didn't even realize that she won. Damn.
I think she is the
used to live in New
sussest
York,
because
too.
she has pulled a few tricks. Like one was she basically did kind of borderline did like a Rachel Dolezal.
Oh, she's a state senator. Okay, yeah, I got confused.
Yeah, state
senator from New York State. Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah. But like she pulled almost like a borderline like Rachel Dolezal. Well, it's one of those things where you're like, I'm Latina, I'm from South America, I'm from Colombia, but like you're a white person from Colombia, you know? And I guess like she's also there was something weird where she was a right wing, like she went to Columbia, but apparently like didn't graduate. And while she was at Columbia, she was pro-life. She was like conservative, and she was in a bunch of like pro-Israel Christian student groups, and like went on Birthright claiming she was Jewish. But then later, I feel like she had to quietly like retract that, and actually she's like not really Jewish, but maybe she had like a great grandfather in Colombia who's Jewish, but like not you know what I mean? Like just, and then it like chameleonizes into a fucking left wing like Justice Democrat overnight. And there was more. I think crypto, maybe it was Crypto Cuttlefish or maybe not, but somebody had dug up that like Julia Salazar's
a weird background. She was like that. She was a like Christian Zionist who went to Birthright. I mean, I'm sure, I don't really know. I'm not an expert
wasn't
on
really
it,
Jewish.
Well, but there probably are programs for Christians to come to Israel that are based on Birthright. So they might not even have required her to be Jewish. I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's called Birthright. Maybe she misrepresented what particular program it was.
Armin Rosen of Tablet Magazine has questioned Salazar's Jewish identity. And she gave some answer that was like, I have some Sephardic ancestry through my father, blah, blah, blah. But then he interviewed her brother that said our father never mentioned any Sephardic heritage. The thing I was going to say,
apparently
though,
she supports BDS now, despite, I guess, being.
Yeah, but like, can you trust it? You know what I mean? And but no. But the thing, hold on. The thing I wanted to say is that somebody found on Twitter that like I think her like grandfather in Colombia was like a Barry Seal like Contra drug smuggler like pilot or something like that. Like it's like Anna Navarro's dad was a Contra. It's like one of those things. So it's like who the fuck even knows who this person is? And she's a Democratic Socialist and all that kind of stuff. I think she's been keeping a low profile like ever since a lot of that flack, you know, kind of came out. Mm-hmm. And it's just, but it's still in office. And so like, that's kind of the type of people that, I don't know, like their convictions don't seem to be very deep. Like AOC just comes off to me like an ultra like model UN, like theater kid government, like centrist liberal. Mm-hmm. Like there's nothing about her actually like in her personality or the things she ends up like strongly supporting. Her rhetoric feels so hollow whenever she talks about something socialist.
Like Jacobin pushed her. Did she even go on Chapo Trap House? Oh yeah, she did.
Oh, and they were huge champions of her early on.
Fucking stupid.
I mean, we all learn and grow.
We grow and learn.
It's okay, guys, but like
people grow and change.
Remember that for the future, guys, to not just jump on the Bernie train so hard.
Yeah, that's really
you get psyoped by the pretty girl that they picked.
Until
she's
recent
pretty,
years,
apparently.
she was a fervent pro-Zionist, anti-abortion Republican activist whose identity as a Jew of color is reportedly self-created. Damn. This is just
like she's neither
like
non-white and like not Jewish, but she said like I am both Jewish and like Latina, like ethnically. You know, it's really something. You know, I still know a lot of people have hope that like these are the cool millennials that are gonna totally like transform our politics and stuff. I fucking don't. And they're gonna like the fact that they won't even come out and I don't know, talk shit about the CIA like speaks volumes to me. Like even if it was like empty rhetoric, like they don't even want. I feel like there's a whole generation of like DSA type people that are like psyoped into being like Slava Ukraina now, or Slava like 5 booster shots, or all kinds of other things that I feel like are not actually very great like leftist positions. But you know, I think their careers are going to be safe and they're going to be with us for a long time.
Yeah, they will be with us for a long time.
They're not going anywhere.
You're gonna take a walk in the rain and you're gonna get wet. I predict you're gonna eat a bowl of chow mein and be hungry real soon. I predict all my sources correct. I predict they're gonna find the queen is a man, but the villain don't care. I predict Lassie will prove that Elvis and her had a fleeting affair. I predict all my sources correct. All my sources correct. Yes, I know they're correct. I predict that if you say your prayers, you'll never lose your hair. And you shake, ain't gonna quake, ain't gonna quake, I predict. And somebody's gonna die, but I can't reveal who. Cold beer will cure a cold. Cold beer and pretzels takes care of cancer. Moscow will march to France. They'll do the can-can dance. Don't worry, it'll work out. Vaccines will grow them out. They're gonna stop Saturday night, so you better have fun now. I predict they're gonna stop having the sun, so you better get 10 now. I predict, and the song will fade out. Yes, the song will fade out, and the song will fade out. I predict, and the song will fade out. Yes, the song will fade out, and the song will fade out. I predict, and the song will fade out. Yes, the song will fade out, and the song will fade out. I predict, and the song will fade out. Yes, the song will fade out, and the song will fade out. I predict, and the song.
Move on.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Might be able to do all these questions.
Yeah, perhaps. All right, where were we? Oh, yeah, okay, this one. All right. Why does the bourgeoisie drop hints? Sorry, this is from Mina Honker on 99. Why does the bourgeoisie drop hints / allows hints about shit in media, like all the on-the-nose occult shit, aliens, pre-9/11 Twin Towers getting destroyed media, contagion and zombie movies in the 10s before COVID, etc.? Well, I think that there's like different stuff going on here. Aliens, I think, is a different category from the other stuff, where I feel like in some respect there's like actually a level to like promote certain beliefs and ideas, which is like not really necessarily dropping hints, but like shaping expectations and opinions. And I think that, you know, on some level, fiction about like pandemics or about like the fear of contagion and that type of thing, like the dangers of sickness, like, which is a very, you know, timeless human phenomenon like that we encounter, like that's been around for a while. So like I feel like movies about zombies, like those, you know, the sort of zombie apocalypse genre, that can have like a bunch of different subtexts. You know, it's not just necessarily about COVID, you know, it can be about any number of things. I think in many ways, like it's a vehicle for anxieties about societal collapse, like in a lot of ways. But anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I think that some of the predictive programming stuff is, I think we talked about this before relative to the Twin Towers. like some of the predictive programming stuff is not like so much predictive programming as like it's a kind of natural thing to expect. And then it's really like not, I mean, maybe it's more predictive programming or the priming of expectations for when something inevitable does happen, or, you know, something, it can be something that its plan does happen. But, you know, I think that...
Well, building like two gigantic, ugly towers that almost like invoke the Tower of Babel, which everybody knows was destroyed.
Yes. I have said that before, that I think that like the towers themselves are predictive programming for their collapse. And like it's not
I would agree with
that strange that people... and they were also like a symbol of global capitalism. So the idea that people like fantasize about them being destroyed just because of their like aesthetic aspects and like how unstable they actually appeared like optically. And you know, also what they symbolize, like it's
and defiantly ugly.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
defiantly
They look
ugly
like
to make you almost
cabins.
want them to be destroyed.
Yes.
That was, I mean, that was even right. Muhammad Atta, I mean, lies upon lies here, but you know, he was like an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Somebody wrote a whole novel about how
thought they were so
Atta
ugly.
like decided it. Yeah, they had to be destroyed.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe
and stuff
he
like
saw
that.
that Limp Bizkit video and that's what triggered him.
Yeah, but putting aside maybe like aliens, because I feel like aliens you can only put in this category if aliens do show up like next month. Then we can go and look back at all this fucking sus shit that we've been covering and be like, that was the predictive programming for it. But you know, aliens haven't like arrived yet. Whereas like, I don't know, the Twin Towers blew up. COVID happened. Zombies are kind of like, zombies you could, I think they occupy a somewhat, I think they really exploded in Hollywood like right after the 2008 Great Recession. And I think that there was this, they were tapping into this fear about like total societal collapse. And also you could even get into some like Mark Fisher territory of like,
think it was a
it's
bit before
easier
that.
to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism, blah, blah, blah. So that's the only alternative of like world destruction that we...
Well, when
like,
did 28 Days Later come out? Was that...
like 2002, I want to say?
Yeah, so I feel like that was really when it started, like the recent zombie craze that kind of has petered out a bit
I guess
now.
that did kick it off, yeah.
So that was a little bit before. I mean, that was post 9/11. So
yes, it was.
Although it was, I guess, a British movie, but still, you know. Yeah, but again, like these, you know, there were so many zombie movies before that were like, you know, it's really, I think, like broadly speaking, it can adapt itself to a lot of things. Like the original Night of the Living Dead, like is about, you know, certain different issues, but it's like, you know, generally like,
I mean, the sequels
what if
dealt with like
society
consumerism,
collapses?
racism. I remember one of the sequels, like these SWAT team cops like break into like a housing project in Chicago to like, because there's zombies in there, but then they just start like wantonly shooting like black people who aren't zombies. You know, and it's like very pronounced.
And
so it's like,
underappreciated one is Day of the Dead, where like the military tries to like train a zombie to use a gun, like it ends up like shooting people. Yeah.
That might have been Day of the Dead actually.
Maybe, yeah, maybe
and
I
then,
just forgot that part.
And then the other one where they're in the mall. It's
That's
like
Dawn of the Dead, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Dawn of the Dead, yeah. So I mean, there's always been that kind of thing there.
Yeah.
And
So, but I think that like both that and Aliens, people express their own sort of wishes and fears. And generally it's bourgeois people who like make these films. And so I don't necessarily think that
certainly
it's like
finance them.
Yeah, and who finance them. So I don't like not in all cases is it like hey like we're planning these things, but like that's what they really think. And I think, you know, it's incredibly system of belief, especially around aliens, like the Close Encounters of the Third Kind ideology of like they're coming and they will help us all to be immortal, or Star Trek where like we will conquer the stars and colonize the galaxy and like we don't have to worry.
Manifest Destiny.
Everything. Yeah, exactly. Manifest Destiny for the stars. Yes.
I mean, even the day the Earth stood still, it mirrors, and who knows, like it's a chicken or the egg thing, but like it mirrors the thing you hear all the time with like UFO cults from Rael to everybody else that is like the aliens. They want us to stop the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
We must be kind to the Earth, or
Yeah.
else we will destroy. You know, like they all got like a signal that went off when we used the atomic bombs, and now they're coming here to tell us to like mend our reckless ways and things, and maybe they'll give us cool technology if we do.
It's weird.
You know, and stuff
it originally
like that.
was more about nuclear weapons, but now you hear more about it, climate change, which You know,
Yeah.
but that definitely is a
saving you.
trope that they're like warning us, you know, which again, that's kind of falls in the same category of zombies where like certain preoccupations are being channeled. So I think a lot of the people who like make these films like are themselves psyoped, like rather than being the psyopers. They're just like kind of replicating like the messages that like we've received for like a long ass time, which are kind of playing themselves out.
Yeah.
And like
I think in a lot
some
of cases,
filmmakers are just straight up like interested in the occult or occult practitioners, and so they
like
will
Kenneth Anger,
like Kenneth Anger
is consciously doing it.
Yeah, exactly. But
even a Polanski is like liminally.
Yes, and those
there's
people
maybe
are
something
incredibly
darker.
influential, so their like symbols perpetuate themselves, even if
let's see. Like the main question here is like, why does the bourgeoisie drop hints or allow hints about shit in media? And you know, we could even expand that to like, you know, things in movies, like maybe like Eyes Wide Shut as an example. Like, why would they allow? Now, maybe they murdered him for.
I guess
making
it
that
could
movie.
be.
I don't know.
I guess it's a different question to say like, why do they allow hints?
Yeah,
but
I think,
don't think
that's a category as well. I mean, well, okay, why?
I think that
why did Hollywood allow JFK to be made?
Why did Hollywood allow JFK to be made? Because like
it's a good
it
question.
ultimately doesn't like it's a limited hangout. It's a limited hangout in film form.
Yeah.
Like
I guess so, or even I think it's pretty good. I think it holds up pretty well, like in terms of giving you a general feeling that, like, okay, yeah, this is like a sinister, like deep state conspiracy. But if you look at how the media treated it at the time,
suspected already. Yeah, I mean, I guess you
well,
could say
yeah, but
it
I
was
mean,
a patsy
you know.
itself to be like clowned on by the media to like debunk JFK conspiracies. But I think
or maybe not even designed. Well, because we have to remember that it was Mossad intelligence officer / Hollywood super producer Arnon Milchan was one of the people that bankrolled this movie, which is curious to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wonder, like, okay, then you would have thought that like maybe some people would kind of step in and want to like retard the progress of this movie getting made, but maybe it's not so much that like they made it to be a patsy. Maybe it was more, okay, they're getting it made. Maybe Arnon Milchan, for his own weird reason, wants to get it made. Maybe Israel wanted to like subtly threaten President George Bush, like at the time, by like having this movie made and be like, we know about Dallas, you know, or something. Who knows? But then, you know, it does get out. But then it's like you have the autoimmune system of the deep state, the media, ready to be like debunked, like not serious, like wow, whoa, you know, not it, my dude. And that's like, if you go back and read most of the like major newspapers and magazines and shit, like it's just ripping on like how irresponsible and like disgusting. I think even Tucker Carlson had, I think I read recently when he was young, he wrote like an article about how like disgusting the movie JFK was. He probably like have Oliver Stone on nowadays, which is bizarre. But it's like, so I don't know, like maybe sometimes does any, like, it's like, did they want that movie to be out there? It seems counterintuitive. Like, why would you want that unless you're getting more out of the negative reaction to it in the press than you would if like the movie never existed? But that feels risky.
Well, what comes to mind, this is quite like a far-flung analogy, but I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Tabari's account of like the martyrdom of Hussein ibn Ali in his history, where like if you read it now, like it really seems like, damn, like this is like really horrible what happened, which, you know, Sunnis do believe. But it's still, even though like it acknowledges that something happened that was horrible, like it's still extremely anti-Hussein. Like it makes him, even though it does make it seem like a horrible tragedy, it makes him seem like a fool, and like there was no real reason for him to like go, you know, to get involved in this situation. Like he was kind of a dupe, and it's like a regrettable accident that, or like almost like, well, it wasn't really an accident, but like a regrettable situation where like the hands of the Umayyads were forced, or, you know, it's like acknowledging something that you could not fully suppress. You know, they could not, you can't really stop like JFK conspiracy theories from existing. That's what, and like it didn't like blow the lid off of it. Like ultimately, yeah, maybe it's encouraged it a bit, maybe it's done a little bit to contribute to the popularity of those ideas, But
It
I don't
kicked
think
up some dirt. They got the act passed to like release more of the records around the assassination, which they're still slow walking to this day. Like they still haven't released all of them, but that
I
was
don't
one
think
thing.
that
It's like, okay, like
I don't think it's like a huge breaking point or like really. I don't think that it was really a game changer so much. I think that it's something that's like tolerated. I mean, in a way, you could say that it would be more conspicuous to like stamp it out.
That's a good point. You know, America is quite good at that, at like letting something, because they know they have certain influences over how it will be perceived in the mass media through their little mockingbird, you know, minions. That and also like I feel like the psyop, the Wurlitzer machine, has almost like self-trained itself and become just like it's so ingrained in the American media now and normalized that you don't even have to. I've said this before, like you don't even have to like meet up with a journalist and like give them an envelope full of cash. Like there's other ways to like incentivize people to like basically like kiss the feet of the CIA at all times.
Yeah.
And like debunk unserious people, etc. So I don't know, that is interesting you bring up though, the kind of notion of, I don't know, made me think about a certain like aspect of like learned helplessness that, you know, basically just like Vigilant Citizen said about the tunnel ritual, that, you know, this is what we believe and this is what we did and you can't do anything about it, which is what you do kind of walk away. It's not like Oliver Stone's fault really, but you do kind of walk away that movie kind of like outraged and like exhausted by the like the swirling like maelstrom of corruption that is our government and how they could get away with all of this, and that even like gaslight everybody who questions it into, no, you're just crazy, and this like flimsy ass story that doesn't hold up. And maybe one of the guys who is centrally involved in it is the fucking sitting president. What are you gonna do about it? You know, and maybe that's a part of it too. Is it curious that George Bush was the president when that movie came out? Because he's like on the list of suspects.
He's not directly like kind of implicated in the movie, is he? Or am I misremembering?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, not at all. But if he was involved, and I have strong reasons to believe he was, I wonder how he felt about that movie.
Well, I don't know, because he wasn't mentioned when he was quite relevant, you would think. That's one thing that does stick out to me about the movie.
I will say, I don't know if that was as well known back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
I think everybody dropped the ball on George Bush. He got one over on a lot of people. I think that, especially for, like, Oliver Stone made a whole, like, Contra movie. He made Salvador in, like, 85. And he knew about, like, the Sandinistas and, like, all this Iran-Contra shit. But he kind of, I don't know. Maybe he said a lot of things at the time, like, fuck George Bush. But I feel like people didn't, they really covered up George Bush's central role in Iran-Contra. It didn't come out maybe till years later with like Russ Baker's book, where he really put forth an argument that George Bush had been CIA probably since college, and that, you know, I guess people knew about Zapata offshore and shit like that, but there wasn't a lot of chatter about him, I feel like, in the JFK assassination community. And maybe that makes people like, I wonder if Mae Brussel actually ever said anything about it, because I kind of trust Mae Brussel. You know, like, she was a dogged researcher of that. And, you know, also Mark Lane, you know, hanging out at Jonestown. Like, he never brought up George Bush as far as I know. I mean, you would think it would set off people's alarm bells when he became CIA director and then became vice president. Like, maybe in like 1968, you're not thinking about Young, the son of Senator Prescott Bush, because he's like, who is he at this point? He's just some businessman, you know, not very important. But then you watch him get all these government appointments again and again and again. And then he ends up like, he rises right to the top, and it does make you wonder. But I don't know. It's complicated. I mean, I think I don't know if they're looking for us to say something like there's an alchemical thing of like, if they warn you beforehand, then like,
the revelation of the method, right? I mean, I think that there might be something to the revelation of the method. I mean, I also feel like the revelation of the method might partially be. I think that it's in a way bullshit, but like, well, I shouldn't say bullshit. Like, I think that the like alchemical like precedent of this idea that you have to reveal the method, or the occult idea that like you have to reveal the method, it's a compelling notion, but I feel like it kind of is like just a Peter Levenda idea that, or I don't even think he made it up. I think the King Kill 33 guy made it up, or like
that might be true,
coined it. You know, I'm not saying there's no precedent for any kind of idea like that, but like it's not like the universal occultic principle that like that guy made it out to be. But I think that a lot of the time these things aren't like really revealing anything that like we don't already know. They're simply
That's true.
training our expectations around certain things. I mean, again, I think that some of the stuff they brought up falls in different categories, but like, for instance, all the pandemic drills and exercises, like we know there's going to be a pandemic. That doesn't like catch them red-handed for doing a pandemic, you know, or whatever. That is literally running a drill for them and for us about like how pandemics are going to play out, and movies about pandemics or any kind of, you know, major world event play the same role. They shape expectations and they shape behavior. And like, if there were to be a blue beam, aliens would be the same, you know, like.
Yeah, I think that's very much more the core of like maybe what is like operationally relevant to a lot of these like weird performative things and stuff like the stuff that you would call predictive programming. Is it's like it's almost a slow like grooming process to like acclimate you to these concepts or shape your consciousness around. That's what I think maybe the 90s action movies of like major monuments, including the World Trade Center, getting blown up again and again. Like, because it's not like revealing a real method or anything like it's not telling you like Dick Cheney did this. Like, it's just kind of saying that like it's framing almost subconsciously like you like when it happens, it's not going to be totally foreign to your mind because you've seen it happen. You've seen it simulated, rehearsed almost like a dozen times in movies. And then maybe it's easier to sort of guide your reaction from there and almost like get everybody hypnotized and feeling like they're in some kind of movie, which I think is an experience we all have sometimes.
Well, and who
when
to
something
blame,
really insane happens.
And who to blame for doing it.
And who to blame,
because,
right? It's a villain. It's a bad guy
in the 80s. In most of these action movies. I mean, maybe not in like Roland Emmerich style, like, you know, destroying everything movies. Usually it's like a natural disaster or something. But like, you know, in Schwarzenegger movies.
The Arab terrorists.
Usually Arabs,
Even Back to the Future
Muslims.
has Libyan terrorists. Like,
right.
it's really fucking crazy. And, you know, True Lies had that. Yeah, like a lot of them.
True Lies, one of the most racist movies.
Crimson Jihad.
Which is that was
James Cameron.
You're fired, you know, where Schwarzenegger tells that guy you're
Yeah,
fired.
exactly. So I mean, I think they lay the groundwork for this, and I mean, even you could even look at it as like, was the hysterical shit about like Russia? I think it gets a little more complex, but at the same time, you could see like starting the hysterical like Russia hate machine like years ago, and then building it up over time. Then when there is a real military conflict, you've like groomed people for like 7 years to like remember to like hate Russia. You know,
I years ago, so my fiance like loves the like these cartoon movies called How to Train Your Dragon. And
I've heard of it.
you know, because I think the dragons in them are very like adorable. You know, even I will admit that they are, you know, because they basically just are like computer animated to have the characteristics of like dogs and cats and like lovable animals. In the third film in this like saga, which is about like interactions between humans and dragons or whatever, they're like some kind of like pastiche of like Scandinavia. It's interesting, like in a way that it's a Scandinavian country. Again, you could do a whole like like vigilant citizen analysis of this thing, but the one vigilant citizen analysis I want to do is that in the third film, I remember very distinctly that the bad guy looks exactly, and like by then this is like a, you know, pretty, yeah, like the, you know, this spans multiple years, but eventually the animation gets like pretty cutting edge, and like by the end it was exactly like Putin. Literally exactly.
Really?
Yeah, it was really amazing. I was like, damn, like I mean, I guess this was like in the Trump era, so like the idea of let me hold on, How to Train Your Dragon 3 bad guy.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And that is that Pixar or DreamWorks?
I think that it's not like Pixar. I think that it's DreamWorks. I think. I might be wrong. Maybe it's, I don't know. But anyway, this is the bad guy.
They're doing the DreamWorks face.
That worked.
The soy face of cartoons.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember watching this and being like, especially if you see it in motion, it's like the mannerisms, like, I almost want to say that he had like an accent, but it was like amazing. It was really like, you know, and this is like for, you know, kids ultimately. I mean, even though
Is it
I'm sure
Grimmel?
who brings the kids to these films like movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I think is it Grimmel?
Grimmel. Let me look up that on Google and see if he
Played
comes
by
up.
F. Murray
yes,
Abraham?
Yeah, yes.
It does look like Putin. He has hair, but
He's
like
Pootler.
other than that,
He's Pootler.
Yeah, he's Pootler.
Yeah.
Wow,
And the
interesting.
mannerisms too, like the movement of like the eyes and things. Yeah, he's Pootler. And he's
Oh
such
my
a
God.
sicko, you know. I feel like, you know, I don't really remember what the plot was. I vaguely remember it being kind of about like I feel like it was about like the existential like crisis. Like in the end they have to give up their dragons, you know, like even though they live in harmony with the dragons in this world, they have to like, you know, you'll have no
Let them
dragons
go.
and you'll be happy. You know, like
No, the Great
have
Reset.
To, like,
No.
Yeah, they have to do they literally have to do a great reset because like it was I remember at the time I was like, yeah, that was about like climate change, which is weird because like the Scandinavian countries, which like the sort of aesthetic of the characters in the film is sort of based on, like, are they the ones who are going to benefit the most from like global climate change, whereas like the global
Exactly.
south will like suffer horribly. But
No, you've stolen her childhood. Shut the fuck up.
yes, but
Wow.
yeah,
That is interesting. Yeah, so it's all you're gonna own nothing. You're gonna love it.
like
That's what
all the beautiful things in the world, like, you know, these. I mean, these dragons, I have to say, like, truly are like basically grown in the Ghost of Kiev lab to be like, you know, like very adorable. Like they basically have all the mannerisms of like, you know, the pets that we love, like dogs and cats and everything. So like,
Well,
but they
in 10 years when they try to ban like cats and dogs, like having pets.
I mean,
this
I
movie
feel
will
really
come in
bad
handy.
for like kids who are growing up now. Like, not to say that we weren't psyops, but like, you know, they've gotten better at it. I feel like they're just like hopeless
Way
in terms
better.
of like all the psyop like machinery like in your brain from like watching all this shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
you can't even keep up with it.
well, wait, I mean, to summarize, I think that there's like there's a lot of components going on. Like on one hand, I feel like I think by and large, like at this point, I mean, because, you know, to dovetail with what I was just saying, like those kids are going to grow up and they're going to reproduce like what they watched, you know, without even having to be like commanded to do it by like Klaus Schwab or like the World Economic Forum high command at like, you know, the PAN headquarters or whatever. Like they will do it. They'll like drop hints, quote unquote, effortless, like, you know, without having to be told. And I think that a lot of contemporary filmmakers do the same, even though, you know, there might be some exceptions. And it might be like a deliberate, like, you know, like, hey, like rubbing it in our faces, folks.
But I think today you would have kind of like the people with the right kind of, you know, political persuasions at these like big companies. Almost, it's like you don't even need to like give them
Exactly.
like deep state synopsis for like what they're gonna write,
No.
because they know to be rewarded they have to like work in some
Exactly.
subplot about how like we can't own anything in the future because of climate change.
Well, and it's not even
and people
like-
be like, wow, like so smart, and like
Yeah.
you're helping these kids, you know, learn the right values. Like
Yeah, and it's not even like, or like, we, the common people, have to give shit up, like, instead of, you know, but like, it's not even like they're like, oh, this will impress my bosses, or they'll like this. Like, they actually believe that stuff because, like, I don't think that anyone was like, oh, you know, we should make Putin the villain in our next movie. Like, they probably were like, we should base our villain on a real, you know, who's a good real life villain to base
who's
our
a real villain?
on.
Who's the biggest real villain in this
Exactly,
world right now?
yeah.
You know,
It's just like, you know, I bet if you look at like kids movies that are made recently, like the villains probably look a lot like Putin and Trump, like on the whole.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like Brooklyn Dad Defiance, like the Whittlest President children's book. Where it's like a goofy caricature of Trump like locked in prison with like little like prison jams on.
I mean, that's a whole other level,
crying.
you know, like, whereas like I feel like kids actually like, you know, there certain things where like they insinuate like sort of a subtle political message where the bad guy looks like Trump or something, but like that type of stuff is another like level of derangement where it's like, I'm gonna read my kid the book about Kamala, and it's like, like what's
Yeah.
your fucking problem? Like, stop it! Like, how dare you? Like,
I wonder if those RBG books are like not selling so well.
like
now
anyone who
after-
buys that type of thing, like, what is your problem? Yeah.
Well, no, that's more popular than you would think now. Like that's so you know, parents, please.
Like,
don't.
it's so like, and also like I feel like that's how I feel a lot of the time. I don't think this is universally true, and like, you know, I understand why people want to do this, but like I feel like a lot of the time when people are like, I saw like a thread on Twitter recently where someone was like, you need to have a conversation with your white son about like, you know, not being a Nazi. Like, so if he said like, you know, and it gave like conversational prompts, like, you know, what to say to your son. And one was like, I don't know about feminism, you know, men need support too, or whatever, like is what the son would say. And then the mom goes like, did you know that, oh, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg also supported men or whatever, something like that. And it's like, you're going to make your kid into a Nazi. Like,
yeah. Oh my God. Stop it.
Like what makes a Nazi? How does he get that way? Like from like that. Yeah. It was,
oh my God.
It was pretty bad. Yeah. And like that's the
God.
same thread where like people were replying and saying like, yeah, white nationalists targeted my 5-year-old and tried to recruit him.
I saw that. Yeah. What the fuck? Like take better care of your children.
There were multiple comments like that. And like, you know,
What?
I wasn't allowed to play video games like at all until like maybe I was like, I don't know, like 10 or 11, maybe a little bit younger. But like, and that to me, like, you know, seems pretty normal. I wasn't allowed to use the internet until I was older than that. And like, I understand that like it was a less ubiquitous part of life, but at the same time, like, this is a digression, but like, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, it would never occur to me to let a 5-year-old use the computer and go on the internet.
If your child is interacting with the if your child's interacting with the internet enough that it's plausible that they may have become a Nazi by age 5,
like that a Nazi
maybe
would try to recruit
you should
them. Like what?
Yeah, like
through what?
or
Roblox?
just, I don't know, through like
there's a Nazi
memes
on
or
Roblox,
like,
and they're like
maybe through like Minecraft memes or something.
Yeah,
like
your kid doesn't need to
who
play
the fuck
Minecraft
knows?
when they're 5. I'm sorry, like they don't need to. They can play with real blocks. Like it's the same. Like they don't
Just,
need
like,
to
turn off the Elsa
They don't need
gate,
to.
like,
Like read
stop
to your
giving them
kid.
YouTube
Like you
Kids.
know, like just be like parent your children.
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
leave
I
it
feel
up
like
to
I
the
see very
devices
sanctimonious
and the
saying that
internet.
because I don't have kids of my own. I just have a dog, and like you know, but I do feel that often. I mean, maybe I do feel that often, like that a lot of people's problems like they just need to parent their children more. I guess easier said than done. So you know,
Or
I'm
just
sorry
don't
for passing
replace it
judgment, but
with the
don't let your kids
internet
online.
or,
They're
like,
5.
social
I feel
media.
I am empowered to say that.
Don't.
But like
hard
you know,
line.
yeah.
Nope. Okay.
All right.
Well, I think we're gonna read this one, but I think like not. I want to acknowledge it, but I think we're gonna save it for a later episode. Somebody, La Bufera asked about Fabian socialism, and we've talked about it. I think since this question was asked, so they just asked. You know, have you come across anything in your research on the Fabian Society of the Webbs and George Bernard Shaw? It seems to span many relevant topics or movements. Atlantis' power networks, Psy-War eugenics, the London School of Economics is an exemplar of, quote, public education of the working class for later institutions like the New School and NYC, democratic socialism in Britain, OTO and Blavatsky and Theosophy, science fiction, H.G. Wells is well-known Fabian, etc. Yeah, I mean, no, it's big sus vibes with the Fabians. I feel like, you know, if you want to compare like the DSA, the people we were just talking about today, like, and maybe people in the ruling class that might even like support them, it like we don't have really the similar terminology here in the US, but they are basically Fabians. Like, like every time.
Yeah.
I would say like that's how you call them what you want, but I feel like these are upper class, kind of elite class people that believe in some kind of socialism is probably going to be inevitable in the future, but they want to sort of guide and gradually sort of dialectically move society towards that goal. But mixed in with that is a lot of like extremely sus bullshit that is like we want to be like the vanguard elite, that the beneficent, you know, vanguard elite, but also we want to do eugenics and maybe we should psy up everybody to bring this to being and stuff.
I guess you're right. There is definitely a parallel. I mean, I find that the like actual ideology like of people like George Bernard Shaw as comes through in some of his weirder plays. I'm forgetting the name of the one, but the one that like where you go into like the distant future, that is such a weird play that I think about a lot, especially when, you know, we talk about like esoteric or sort of unconventional or like early or like 19th century views or interpretations of evolution. I often think of that play by George Bernard Shaw, but now like the name of it is actually like escaping me. Like we talked about it at one point. Back to Methuselah.
Oh
yeah, but. Yeah, it goes through like all time and like it ends in the year like AD like 31,000. Like, you know, and everyone is like, I thought nanite cloud.
Didn't H.G. Wells also have like the time machine where
Yeah.
he goes like way into the future and everyone's like a chimera, like
Well,
Goblin
it's actually,
Man or something?
No, not everyone's a Chimera Goblin Man.
Well, they split races, right?
The working class became like kind of like bat people who live underground and but are more intelligent, and they feed on the like upper classes who are like farmed by them. Because
that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
For these kind of elitists. I mean, he was also like, I think we went over someplace before, like he called himself a Fabian socialist, maybe, but he was like pretty flirtatious with fascism as well.
We talked about him in our Mars episode a little bit. Yeah,
that's
I'm not
right.
sure if we, but I think it's very interesting to explore like their particular. But I think that the parallel like is true, because I feel like even though the specifics maybe of that kind of like cosmology that you see like between these different people, like expressed in like Blavatsky, like through theosophy and through like the entrance of science fiction, like those things still do persist. There actually is a fascination with science fiction still, like within these sort of left circles, I think, with not maybe theosophy per se, but with like, different forms of what maybe what's called spirituality, So I think that is like a heavy. So I think that is an interesting parallel. But yeah, I mean, I would like to do like a deep dive. I mean, any given one of these people would be fascinating to delve into. Like, you could do a whole episode about Shaw. You could do a whole episode about H.G. Wells.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm interested in like the organization of like the Fabian Society, though, and I know Jason Horsley has like written some stuff, and I believe even like his grandfather was a prominent Fabian and stuff, and he's very sussed out by them. And I feel, but I've said this before, I really want to separate like. Because I think he says it sometimes, like people like Alex Jones say, like a socialist is a socialist, basically. So like the Fabians, like they're socialists, blah, blah, blah. The transhumanist sicko fucking, and just like Mao, just like Lenin, just like Stalin. It's like, whoa, dog, hold up. Like those guys are not the fucking same as like Fabians, unless you want to go like, oh, Fidel Castro was like part of a Masonic conspiracy and it was all an inside job, blah, 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 which I'm not buying. I think that, but like in the West, if you're talking about the Western left, like this is kind of like the left wing of the bourgeoisie, you could say. And you could say that about maybe certain currents of either the DSA or even, I think more prominently, the kind of radical like climate change kind of liberal movement has very big Fabian vibes. Remember I posted a long time ago that it was like, oh, like a Getty, like one of RFK's like grandchildren, and like the weird like spooky guy who like ran like a threat analysis company and like worked for Bill Gates are all like donating money to Extinction Rebellion. And it's like, you should not fucking trust any of these people. And like, but they use a very radical language, right? About, needing, like we're going to almost echoing the Fabians, and they have to like the inevitability of like change is coming. This time, though, it's not like class revolution that's coming. It's like climate catastrophe that's coming. And so we're going to have to reorganize, our society and our economy and all these other things. But they're stepping forward to be like the vanguard of it. And they're going to, and it's like, the more and more you see that shit, it's just like,
well, because they're the ones who really need to make concessions, like, and they're the ones who have caused it.
How convenient.
So they
the Gettys, the Rockefellers, like they could take all the ayahuasca they want, but it's still like your multi-generational wealth is like,
it's a problem.
Destroy the planet and just like Bill Gates, like you want to get out ahead of like the Great Reset, like all this shit is like we want to get out ahead of whatever calamities are coming to make sure we stay on top.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what the Fabian, and who knows, maybe they're competing like vibes within the Fabians, where some of them are a little more like eclectic Jeffersonians who like really did want to like overthrow the monarchy, but then like other ones were like cool calculating sickos.
There were a lot of weirdos in the Fabian Society. I will say,
yeah,
but
the Huxleys. I mean,
like
MK Ultra, like Esalen. A lot of that shit is like deeply Fabian influenced.
Yeah, no,
I think Jack London hung out with them.
It's a very sus situation. I mean, speaking to the phenomenon that you're talking about with like Alex Jones and like the sort of conflation of like different socialisms, I remember like Glenn Beck having like a segment on his show of George Bernard Shaw just talking and saying like, I think you should have to go before a board and explain why do I deserve to exist? And if you cannot explain why, you will be liquidated or whatever. And Glenn Beck just like having a conniption over it. But I mean, That is a sauce.
They are weird like that. Yeah, they're on some weird shit like that, like Tavistock Institute. Like, what if we just use psychosurgery to solve the criminal tendencies in man? Like, they're into some creepy sci-fi solutions to everything.
Bob Shipman is a modern day Fabian socialist, except he's not like a hyper evolved like back to Methuselah like genius. He's like a complete dumbass, but like he believes in like the same like eugenic shit and like loves popcorn sci-fi movies and like interprets the entire world through that. That's the ultimate legacy of Fabianism that we live in. Yeah, and we must live with it.
So sus. It's so sus. Okay, I think we have just enough time for this last question.
All right, let's try.
Kind of a historical hypothetical curveball.
Okay, I'll read this one, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Loich, or I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Big fixture of the Discord.
Big on the grotto.
Our French friend.
This might be his first question.
Yeah, 912 asks, wow, that magical day when we all felt as one, asks, what if the New Deal was a failure and the Great Depression unemployment crisis was really ended by World War II, including the build-up to it? First with exports to both sides, then it looks like the Soviets and the Japanese might not honor the debts all these countries owed the U.S. if they emerge victorious by sending all the men, including the unemployed, to war against the Axis. If that was the real story of America's economic recovery then, what's going to happen now? Honestly, I learned that was true in high school. So to me,
I
that was like
hearing that.
Yeah,
I was not,
what I was actually taught by the educational institutions. So here in the United States, maybe Loic has a different perspective because he's French. So maybe in France, they're like, the New Deal saved them.
Maybe. I remember hearing that a little bit more because one of my history teachers in high school was like pretty conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's something that he would have said. That
I don't know if it means
maybe
the
other
New Deal was
conservatives
a
said.
failure. I don't think that was the way that it was framed. It wasn't framed as a failure per se, but it was like really what did it was World War II.
Yes. I definitely heard that across the board. And like conservatives would say it was a failure. And then it was the only, which is really, if true, fucked up. That the only thing that can save us is endless war. But I think maybe just through people's experience, perhaps that was internalized, in the mid 20th century that, hey, everything was shitty. And then this big apocalyptic war happened. And we're like I would say about the only country majorly involved in the war that was not like deeply fucking bombarded and ripped to pieces. Right. Yeah, maybe Australia. But like, besides that, like we basically got to send all of our excess male population off. But I don't know, like putting aside, because I think it did. I would not call the New Deal like a failure, but at the same time, I do believe that World War II.
It's kind of undeniable that it played like a major role in the recovery. But I do think that to the latter part of the question, I don't think that like there's going to be a like catastrophic war now. I think almost maybe like the opposite will happen in a way where like I think that the most likely thing that happens now, like in order to like, if we suffer, the more we suffer economically, the people who are going to bear the burdens, like, are going to be the American people, like the average American is like going to have to bear like the brunt
every
of it.
time.
Like I think that maybe the dream of actually pulling ourselves out of the economic problem maybe will just slip away and we'll be told like a different story about why it's necessary instead of like the idea of like that we have to end it, like, or we have to stop this economic problem. It'll just be like, no, like you have to suffer, we're going to continue to be rich, and like this is why it's fine and this is why it's necessary.
Does seem to be
that's what I
there
feel
does
is
seem
more
to be a lot of
than like
there does seem to be
with China or something.
There does seem to be a lot of predictive programming around the idea that you're going to have to sacrifice things. Like extreme austerity is going to be like the morally correct position to hold. Yes. And even though I think that's getting a little bit very neoliberal, and it's getting out of hand, I think with, the baby formula, the inflation, gas prices, if the housing market, I've seen it signs that it's like actually slowing down for the first time in forever. And who even knows if that shit collapses? I mean, I think at first like millennials would be like, yay, but then like what happens when it takes the rest of the economy with it again? like it did in 2008, because I do remember that, and that fucking sucked. And then there's going to be a lot of angry people, and I think you're right. Like it's going to be the pain is going to be heaped upon the lower 90% of pretty much everybody except the people who already have a shitload of money. Is going to feel a lot of pain from it. So there's going to be a lot of rage. And I mean, maybe what they're getting at here with like the World War II thing, because they're talking about the buildup and how the U.S. was kind of trying to economically boost itself by exporting to both sides, which is actually an interesting take, because we've talked before about, I mean, everybody knows that we did, under Roosevelt, we did the Lend-Lease program with the Soviets. We gave them a lot of weapons, right? We gave weapons, we gave planes and tanks and guns and shit to the British as well. So we were covering the Allied side of it, and let's not forget, like people are making money off that, right? Just as they are today with Ukraine. But then we talk about, Prescott Bush and all the like Brown Brothers Harriman and all the Nazi economic financing and shit. And like Ford's plants were still operating in Nazi Germany throughout the war. I think they even like told the Army Air Corps to like not bomb his Ford plant and stuff. So it's okay. That actually kind of makes sense a little bit. That's like the overall American economy is selling to both sides because fuck it. Why not? Like make as much money. But then they say that, he said, when it looks like the Soviets and the Japanese might not honor the debts all the countries owed the U.S. if they emerge victorious, then they decided, well, we have to go into this war in ourselves. And, we get the added benefit of sending several million young men over there, like 400,000 of whom are going to die, which alleviates our problems a little bit. And then, by the end of this war, everybody's industrial economy is in fucking tatters, and we have a perfectly functional one that's actually better than ever. And we get to be the exporter to the world for like a good 20 years. And then our problems began after that, So, but does that, so the analogy today maybe would be that we're flooding Ukraine with like money for weapons, which I'm sure a lot of it is cycling back into our economy through the weapons contractors, right?
Yeah.
Because like we're giving them money to buy our weapons, right?
Yeah.
I so for the most part, like maybe they're buying some Turkish drones on the side, but like the Javelins, that's all American, baby.
That is a good point. So, maybe that is what Loic is getting at.
But then will we be worried that Ukraine is not going to be able to pay the debts back? So then we're going to get involved in a shooting war with Russia because that's better than just letting Ukraine lose and not getting... But the thing is,
that
like...
seems unlikely, though. I mean, even Jen Psaki, was like snarking about the idea of like war with Russia and how like ludicrous it would be. I don't know. It still seems like a faint possibility. I just think
I don't see it at this time.
Yeah, I don't. I think
Also, do you know if the deals we're passing, like the $40 billion, all this fucking money, like correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I've heard about it so far is like we're just gifting that money to Ukraine. It's not Lend-Lease, which I think was like a deal. Lend-Lease was like a loan agreement.
No, I haven't heard anything about it, like the expectation that it would be returned.
That's
too,
that's how even like conservatives are kind of like mad about, or just like people on the street are mad about it because it's like we have all these fucking problems right now.
The people complaining about it would have been like they won't pay it back instead of like why are we giving? Yeah, which is why I almost feel like it might be more likely that the country will like. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic and say like tear itself apart, but like a less hyperbolic version of that before we would go into like a shooting war with Russia or with China. It doesn't seem like an imminent possibility. I mean, again,
like you think the United States would collapse into
the
like
usual caveats,
chaotic.
Well, I know. I think that's exactly like the usual caveats about like my ability to intuit the future. And no, I wasn't exactly. That's what I meant in saying a less hyperbolic version of tear itself apart. I don't think that it will be like a civil war, but I think that I don't know, like maybe like civil unrest rather than like something cognate to the actual civil war. The regular civil war that we had before. Like, I don't think that would be a pitched civil war.
A little bit of like World War II martial law. Kind of thing.
Something. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe.
Like
I don't see
mass civil unrest, like mass protests, like something like it almost seemed like we were on the precipice of like during the first summer of COVID. Like if you just take that to an order of magnitude, like even if you just like cube that. you would almost be at like an extreme level of like civil unrest. Like, yeah, I think
It's
that.
pretty. Things are really coming off at the seams
And
right
then
now.
like, yeah,
and
just whoever's president, President Vance being like, why can't we just shoot them? And then doing so,
yeah, I don't know, or like, or on the flip side, like President Pete throwing like all the MAGAs in like re-education camps,
Yeah,
where
or
they say
shooting the MAGA protesters, I guess. It really depends. I mean, I guess it would have to be,
or like abortion activists like blowing it. Like there's a lot of like pro-choice people like talking like the Weather Underground right now. They're going to start like blowing up like pro-life, offices and stuff like that.
That's
like,
interesting. I feel like that's
okay. I'm sure that won't blow back hard on you.
Yeah, not like necessarily a good strategy. Like it probably wouldn't be one or the other. Like, I mean, again, I'm doing what I like said I shouldn't do and like speculating like darkly about like in a complex scenario of the future. But yeah, I feel like it would be like a situation like where, you got your Kyle Rittenhouses like mobilized, and you also have like, your
I think if there's anything, because we're recording this like the week of the mass shootings that just happened. I think we're recording this a few days after the one in Texas, and like I think what you're seeing over the last like decade or so is an intensification of like, as much as like both sides like to paint kind of like all mass shootings as like one thing, I think the reality is that it's almost maddeningly diverse. In like, it's like 1 week it's a Hotep, another, like, you know what I mean? Like another week it's like a Nazi, another week it's like an incel, another week. So there's like always there's like different competing political, ideological, or like psychological reasons why people are snapping, and then they get interpreted differently based on what the stated motive was, if there was one. And I feel like that's I'm not going to say that's like a conscious tactic by whoever is maybe goosing up these attacks to happen a little bit, but it seems like perfect American Gladio to make everybody go insane is that you can't even focus on like one thing, because there's always a new type of crazy person, extremist, and
I mean, there's
the only thing I can
you
see in
do
common
about our society definitely causes people to go crazy. I would say there's many things in our society that cause people to go crazy, but to deal with those things, I think there have always been things in society that make people go crazy. There have always been crazy people with instincts to violence. I don't think that like the impulse to do a mass shooting. I really think that I have to say, I think it's a problem that will not be solved, because I don't think that it's tenable. I don't think that it is like remotely possible. And I understand like the argument that like an armed population cannot be subjugated, but the only way to actually fix the problem would be to subjugate the armed population and like just ban the guns the way like Australia did or whatever, which will not happen.
Yeah, which is never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. So
never, ever going to happen.
You're right. Yeah.
And I trust the official people, the serious people who are allowed to have guns, less than ever, given by their like reaction to the Texas shooting, where they like cowered outside for an hour while the guy just like executed everybody.
Yeah.
And
what's the
like,
point? And like then you have people like Ted Cruz being like, "That's what we need, like rent a cops at the schools." Like, okay, so that they can hide. Like,
or give teachers guns.
Yeah,
then,
right.
Like, those teachers are going to shoot some kids. Like, but I mean, it is like it's a serious problem, and I think even if hypothetically, like, I think there's an American. I mean, even Joe Biden himself said it. I was kind of surprised. Like, he pointed out, like, nowhere else in the world there are places that have high crime. There are places that have tons of guns. Only in America do we have this like particular phenomenon of like massacre shootings in like schools and churches and shit. I mean, you have one-offs like New Zealand, like Christchurch or something, but like mostly this is like an American genre. And I'm like, yeah, that's why we should like abolish the intelligence services, maybe, or like, shut down the internet till we find out what the hell is going on. Because if you notice, all these kids, actually, it was funny. I was checking in on, whenever a mass shooting happens, I check in on InfoWars to see what they're saying.
Right.
And, maybe this is the psyop, but a guy called in yesterday to Alex Jones, and he was a special ed teacher in Texas. And he actually said, like, the shooter was one of his students.
Wow, okay.
Like, he knew him. But then he kind of wouldn't say like what he asked him about, like, was he autistic? Was he on the spectrum? Was he on the murder pills? And the guy said, like, I can't violate my confidentiality because he's still technically like a student, and I don't feel comfortable like sharing his details. But the main point that he wanted to make, and assuming he's not a psyop, I think it's a good point.
Okay. Yeah. All right,
but he was like, because actually my mother is also a special ed teacher who retired like right after COVID, but got to see at the end there like how it was affecting kids. And I heard very much the same thing to what this guy says, is like these kids all got, like, especially special ed kids, who a lot of that instruction in those resource classes are about building structure and helping them overcome whether it's ADD or they're dyslexic or they're on the spectrum or whatever. It's a lot of it is about like building structures to like allow them to like be able to do their work or like get through assignments and things like that. And when lockdown happened and all the schools just completely shut down, so many of these kids, and this guy was saying, like, I saw it personally, like so many of these kids just went down like a dark rabbit hole, pretty much like into the internet.
Yeah.
And they lost all structure in their lives. They lost whatever ability we had to like guide them or engage with them or, pull them back a little bit. Like, we weren't there anymore physically. And so a lot of kids just like dropped off. And, so many normal things that we rely upon to like socialize young, like we already had school shootings before COVID, but this, he described it as like, this is like pouring gasoline on the fire of like having young men who were like in that perfect age where like their high school experience was like robbed by COVID lockdowns. And they've been on the internet playing shoot 'em up video games, exposed to like God knows what. And going in this like mental spiral. And I mean, there's room there both for like, and then like some kind of weird FBI guy like groomed him to like go commit a mass shooting, or just like even as Alex Jones said, like, it's not like they take you in a CIA factory these days, folks. Like, the entire culture is mind control.
That's true.
And
yeah.
I think he does have a point there.
definitely
Like
does.
the entire culture between like Twitter, 4chan, like playing shoot 'em up, which are basically combat
if you're
simulator
5
video
years old
games.
getting recruited by white supremacists.
Yeah, 5-year-olds are getting.
but-
Didn't you see that article like just a week or two ago about how like the Pentagon or the CIA has a 60,000 person army of like anonymous internet operators?
Yeah.
That like do influence ops online.
I'm not surprised by that at all. Yeah,
I'm not
I haven't
surprised
seen the
either.
article, but I am not surprised. But yeah, I mean, whether that guy like is telling the truth or just like using that story to make his argument, like I mean, I think that he is right. I mean, I've experienced that myself. Like, I'm still technically in school, so I have felt like the effects, like the destructuring effects, like the sort of isolating effects of like not being cut off by COVID. And I'm like old, like like I am like a fully mature, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
like person. So yeah, I think that definitely is true. I mean, it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah. So, to answer the final question, if that was the real story of America's recovery then in World War II, what's going to happen now? I don't know, but it's going to be dark.
Yeah.
It's going to be just dark
Hard
shit
question.
on the horizon.
Yeah, we
I
didn't
think.
have enough time to truly tackle this one, but I hope that we gave some indication of our response. We actually, I mean, technically we did actually make it through our full battery of questions. We
I don't know
punted
if
a
we've ever
couple of
done
them
this,
to like
but-
circle back around, but we did a
Yeah,
bunch. We made good progress.
We still talked
today.
about them.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, we made it just on time. So, many thanks to the Grotto of Truth once again
Yes.
for always providing good questions.
Yes.
If anybody wants to sign up, you can go to patreon.com/supplementaljihad. And as many people ask me, the invite link to the Discord is in your confirmation email. So I think I wrote that in like the welcome note. They hide it quite well. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you want to support us and jump on the Grotto there, a lot of cool people there. We also have merch now. I think we're both wearing it today.
Oh yes, we both happen to be wearing our SJ paraphernalia currently.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So on
As we record
supplementaljihad.com.
Yeah. I'm wearing
go
my
there,
OG Elwara graphic shirt, and Dimitri's rocking some of the new. Yeah.
I'm wearing the stick to the plan.
All right. Yeah.
Yes, redacted shirt, redacted Photoshop to be redacted which is interesting timing this week to be wearing like a domestic terrorist. It's actually Comrade Stalin, so it's fine.
Yes.
But yeah, if you want to check that out, we also got hats right now.
Yeah.
I'm vibing on these hats. You know,
The
it's
hats
going to
are
be
nice,
a hot
Denim
critical
hat, all
paranoid
white.
summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, denim hat, all white, Laura Ashley
Flamingo.
style.
Yeah.
Flamingo green. Got a couple more in the pipeline, but this
Yeah.
summer. Been on a merch designing frenzy.
All right.
But yeah, check that out if you want.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it there for now. But until next time, dear listener, stay vigilant.